I'm Bruce Harders, and this is Voices in the Village, a show that aims to inform but also entertain. Today with us is Brett Halsey, a 7-year veteran of Laguna Woods, played in 101 films, over 400 TV shows, and has written 4 novels. Brett, thanks for coming by and welcome to Voices in the Village.
Oh, it's good to be here.
Brett, you have a story, you have an experience that a billion zillion people wish they could have gone through. Tell us that story.
Which one? Oh, no, really, which?
The story of how you got into the movies.
Oh, that one. Oh, yeah.
You mean there are more than like that?
Yeah. Oh, when I've always wanted to be an actor, and I went to school when I was just 19 to learn radio. I did a short stint in the Navy, and I was a disc jockey for Armed Forces Radio Service. And while I was going to school, I got a job as a page at CBS Radio. There was no television then, or there was, but very little.
And you were all, what, 19?
Yeah, I was 19. And one of the shows I worked was the Jack Benny Show. So one day I got friendly with Jack and Mary, his wife, Mary Livingston. And one day Mary called me and she said, I want you to work the sponsors booth today. I said, okay, well, the sponsors booth was a booth in these radio station thing where this special guest would sit in a booth up above the audience and looking down on the stage, and it was glassed in. And so I said, okay, and I went up there, and we got there, and Mary was all excited. She came up and she introduced me to this guy. I didn't know who he was, but being the page and a nice guy. But 2 days later, I got a call at school if they wanted to see me at Universal. So I went out to Universal and met the head of casting. And he said, well, we're interested in you. We'd like to see you. Do you have a scene? Well, I didn't have a scene. I said, okay, I have some radio stuff. Okay, well, come back tomorrow with the radios. So I went back tomorrow and I said, well, I have my scene. He said, that's all right. We've decided to put you under contract. I said, why? That's how naive I was. He said, Brett, I don't know. Well, I learned later on that the man that Mary introduced me to was the president of Universal.
That's a good reason.
And apparently she was all for me, and he said, okay, we'll put the kid under contract. And that's how it got started. And then I went to school for a couple of years there.
Well, talking about school, what were the feelings in your stomach when you arrived for your first session in the Universal School?
Well, before the school, my first day on the lot, the movies were something beyond, and being in a studio and being under contract and being a part of it. And walking down the street one day, and I see Jeff Chandler coming toward me. Now, Jeff Chandler was a great star at that time. And I looked at him, he looked at me, and he says, hi, Brett, my name is Jeff Chandler. I'd just like to welcome you to the studio.
And he was a real hero of yours.
Oh, yeah. I worked with him later in Return to Peyton Place. We co-starred in that. And that was a big thing to co-star with my idol. He was a really nice man.
Well, going back to Jack Benny and Mary Livingston, what was Jack Benny like?
Jack Benny was like what you imagine him to be like.
Like
he
his
was nice
public
guy,
persona.
very professional, very dedicated to his work. He was very careful. Mary was lighter than he was. She was really nice. But it was a great experience.
I can imagine. Well, of all the films and television shows you've made, what are some of them that you have a particular affection for?
There are many. There's one that I made in Italy. I made a lot of films in Italy. I spent many years. I did my first film in Italy in 1962, and my last film there in 1991. But there was one in particular I did that was a straight horror film, the script. And this director, I think this was the third film this particular director and I worked on together. And when I read the script, I thought, we could have some fun with this. And I started fiddling with the script and came up with the idea to do it as kind of tongue-in-cheek, to do it a dark comedy. And the director said, yeah, let's do it. So we worked together and we came out with it. It was a fun picture.
Well, I guess you were telling me that the horror genre eventually floated into what we know as the spaghetti western.
It was kind of the other way around. The spaghetti westerns came before the epic of Italian films for Americans. It started with the strongman pictures, the Hercules, and so on. Then that morphed into kind of Scaramouche sword pictures, the Three Musketeers type pictures, which I did a number of those. And from then, spy, detectives like James Bond, then the spaghetti western, then what we call spaghetti horror.
I see.
In between, I did some serious films as well, Godfather 3 and...
Well, the spaghetti westerns were sort of B movies?
Oh, yeah.
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 Well, what do you think of what did you think then, and how do you reflect on it now about the spaghetti western?
It was not as tight a formula as working in American films. I'd worked in some American westerns, and the scripts are, you stick to the script, everything is set, the time is set. You have a schedule that, by God, you'd better get through it by the end of the day, or maybe the director will get fired. And over there, things were much looser. I can remember you go to work in the morning and you'd have coffee and you'd talk about it and get a couple of shots, and then it gets to be lunchtime. The production manager says, "Oh my God, we've only had 2 shots when we have another. Let's get to it." And then all afternoon we'd work.
It sort of reflected the whole genre of being in Italy, wasn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
followed the way things were.
Yeah, well, for example, at lunchtime when you're on location, they'd bring you your box lunch or whatever, but it always had wine. So in America, you'd never have.
How do you feel about radio? I'm sorry, about movies and television today, as related to what you grew up with?
Today, it seems more corporation-oriented, more money-oriented. When I started in the movies, all the studios were run by movie makers. That's all they did was make movies. Today, they're corporate people. They're interested more in the money. Now, in the beginning, of course, they were interested in the money because they had to make money, or they'd close the studio.
Right.
But they were more hands-on, and people were better trained. Today, I see young actors come and go, and I don't know who the hell they were in the first place. We went to school. We were
right.
When I was under contract at Universal, the studio had a school. I went to school 5.5 days a week, and I had to be there. You get a report card at the end.
Oh.
Well, I always wondered, there were some of the girls that sometimes they were there and sometimes they weren't, and they didn't get a report card. But they were friends of a producer. The movies had some of that too.
Well, you also have a famous, I guess, shirt-tail relation that we think of George Patton in the Army as being everything, but there was a guy by the name of Bull Halsey that was also bigger than life.
Yeah, Admiral William F. Bull Halsey. Yeah, he was a great guy. He came. I was shooting this western in Arizona, and I just had a very small part. I was one of the. I think at the end of the call sheet there were like 5 cowboys, and I was the 5th cowboy.
Halsey came down.
Halsey came and had lunch with me, and to hell with the producer, the director. He came to have lunch with his nephew.
Pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Well, you know, thanks to you, we have something for you viewers out there. Brett has written a book, A Grave Misunderstanding. And for the first 5 people who call in here, we'll get you an autographed issue of this book. All you have to do is call the station at 597-4295 and ask for Stephanie. Brett, it was great to have you here, and thank you. We'll have to have you back again sometime.
Yeah, this went too fast.
Absolutely. Thanks. I'm Bruce Harders. This has been Voices in the Village, and I hope to see you next time.